So I've learned all of this over the course of my life and the wilderness of society and how I relate to others and these elaborate self models inside my head are filtering everything for you. And it's everything you experience, it's everything I experience, and hence we take a break temporarily, however briefly, and suddenly we experience one reality. And this one reality, it's lovely. It's one interdependent mode of being. It's also at the same time one consciousness that seems to extend beyond what we can understand and encompasses everything. So I think the religiosity that I'm trying to capture in what is and what is it is something that I value, that they value, that we theistically saying God is simultaneously transcendent and immanent and does all things. So, in this experience here that I'm having with you right now, Hindu English is what I'm going to establish. And God being a transcendent and immanent person, or being, as one way of thinking about it, is something that not a lot of people consider. We have a two-sided coin. One is the mind that creates the experience, and the other side is the awareness that's just like, a mirror, registering what's happening without being entrenched, being entangled in this quantum entanglement. Is this you separated by the subspirit or unconscious film? It actually exists out there in the universe, they say. And what happens to me, what's interesting is that the mind wants to find out what this consciousness is. And it can't find itself. It finds intelligence, it finds the vigilance, it finds all sorts of human attitudes. But it doesn't know how it can penetrate through this subconscious, basically conclusive mental process. And that's where it's like a maze, like that side of the awareness that does all the calculation and figures out the ins and outs of the whole business of being human. The experience itself is having the experience, and the experiencer is having the experiences. That's where spirituality and the spiritual beliefs and leaps, consciousness, and trying to find oneself is playing into the whole riddle of that aspect of taking us back to the earliest moments, and the evidence that that kind of internal dialogue is something that is tied to the self-reflection. And it may have been, unfortunately, religiously interpreted in ways that would serve the powerful, And that functionality and intentionality of a lot of animals is a fake are intentional. So we certainly don't have to corner ourselves on a corner on the market of intentionality and ascensions, or any of these kind of other things that are afforded in the human evolution and its trajectory. We know that the species is about 200,000 years old. Our genus is around 2.4 million years old. So the question becomes, where do we start seeing any of these symptoms, if you will? And it's very interesting that there are caves in the world. For example, in South Africa, there's a historic cave that's home to this human, perhaps, ancestor, the hominid, and in any case, called a homo naledi. And apparently there were numbers of individuals who were literally dragged into this chamber, into this very deep subterranean cave. So Rising Star is a very famous project in anthropology, and one can often watch live feeds of scientists trying to study this and study these chambers, crawl into them, and incredibly small passages. And yet we know that approximately 250,000 years ago, people were disclosing their very intentional, private, ritualistic ways and information, going through a lot of effort, a lot of energy to do this. And the problem becomes that this controversial topic is not to be discussed on the internet with strangers. If not particularly controversial, next steps, burials, and mind games are not controversial enough for you, then the belief doesn't fossilize. You know, we have people. We have the people. We are the people of the people, and we're talking about the search and yearning to figure all of this out. And that's the case. It's a little bit appealing to anthropologists that have discovered that, let's say, Homo neanderthals, they were, their skeletons were imposed with the burial sites and the filaments, some gear, or that kind of order. And we're going in that kind of order, starting a little earlier, in with the Neanderthal populations disturbing other populations, and that's fascinating because these burials, they weren't there 1,000 years ago, 600,000 years ago. Back there in Russia, where Homo sapien sites are so common, there's so few. And again, we have some gooey conversations, some intriguing hints, and we're definitely gonna figure it out. Fast forward, we're gonna leap over a couple of 100,000 years, and we're gonna end up waving our peace flags. The white flag is gonna be waving in the wind once again.